Quote, defendant Christopher Joseph Quaglin was among the most violent of the January 6 rioters. He viciously assaulted numerous officers, and this court convicted him of 6 counts of assault, 2 counts of robbery, obstruction of the congressional certification vote, and other offenses. On at least a dozen occasions, he stood face to face with officers as he screamed at, pushed with outstretched arms, punched, swatted, and slapped officers, pushed bike racks into officers, and even choked one officer to the ground. He used his body as a battering ram and employed a stolen police riot shield against the officers in an attempt to force his way into the building. He sprayed several officers directly in the face with chemical irritant. He joined the collective mob pushes against the police line. In total, he was on Capitol grounds wreaking havoc for more than 3 hours. Due to his egregious criminal conduct on January 6th, his refusal to accept responsibility, and the need to deter him and others from further wrongdoing, the government recommends that the court sentence him to 168 months of incarceration. That sentencing memo was written by a Justice Department prosecutor whose name is Ashley Akers. And the Trump-appointed judge who heard that case and considered that memo agreed and sentenced the defendant to 12 years in prison, just shy of what the prosecutors had asked for. Now, less than a year after that, he's out. And one of the last things Ashley Akers did as a prosecutor for the U.S. Department of Justice was submit filings to dismiss charges against defendants in cases she spent years building. Dismiss the charges because these people have been now pardoned by Donald Trump. I say that's one of the last things she did for the U.S. Justice Department, because after more than 7 years as a federal prosecutor and involvement in many January 6 cases, Ashley Akers left the U.S. Justice Department.
Hi, my name is Suri, Crowe, and you're watching the MeidasTouch Network. This is a report that I've been wanting to do actually for a while, and I was just reminded why Ashley Akers' story is so important by yet another frightening development at Trump's Department of Justice. More on that in a minute, but first more on Ms. Akers via Rachel Maddow.
Did you want to leave?
No, I suppose yes, because I left. But the circumstances came in a way that I didn't expect.
Yeah. What is it like to have worked on so many of these January 6 cases? I understand that you may have had as many, if not more, January 6 trials as any prosecutor in the department. What is it like to have all of that work and all of those cases and all of those convictions and all of those sentences wiped away by the president?
It was appalling, really. I think that the pardons that happened were disturbing. They were disturbing for a number of reasons. They were disturbing because it condones the violence that you just described and that the prosecutors on the team have been describing for years in court. It condones that. And this wasn't ordinary violence. As you described earlier, the police officers who were testifying in trials for years talked about this being the scariest day of their lives. They didn't know if they were going to come home. They talked about this being a medieval battle scene. And not only does it condone violence against those law enforcement officers, but it undermines the rule of law. And as judges in our court have continually repeated that the cornerstone of our democracy is the peaceful transition of power from one administration to the next. And the crimes that were pardoned from January 6th were crimes that disrupted that peaceful transition of power.
So Ms. Akers, a bright and shining star at the DOJ, after 7 years as a federal prosecutor, painstakingly putting several of these January 6 cases together, getting convictions, had to resign from a job and a mission she loved because of the abject corruption of the Department of Justice under Trump. And the story that reminded me to go back and revisit Ms. Akers' tragic resignation, and there have been several more prosecutors who have resigned from DOJ under duress, was this story where a DOJ pardon attorney says she was fired when she refused to add actor and convicted felon Mel Gibson to a list that would have restored his gun rights. That attorney, Liz Oyer, explains to Chris Hayes at MSNBC.
Was Mel Gibson one of those people that you had identified? He was not. Mel Gibson has never applied for any type of relief through my office, but we were able to identify 95 ordinary Americans who had applied for pardons, who had been waiting years to be considered for that relief, and who have been extensively vetted. All of these folks had in common a number of things, including that their underlying crimes of conviction were nonviolent offenses. They were minor offenses. They were offenses that happened many, many years ago, in all cases 20 plus years ago. And these are all individuals who had demonstrated by interviews with neighbors and employers and family members and others who know them that they have been outstanding citizens since the time of their conviction. Mel Gibson was not among those individuals who we identified.
Well, how does Mel Gibson enter the workflow?
So what happened was I was asked to put together a memo for the Attorney General summarizing the cases of 9 of the 95 individuals that my colleagues and I had identified. They had whittled that 95 down to 9, and they asked me to write a memo to the Attorney General recommending that these would be suitable candidates for her to grant this relief of restoring their firearm rights. And I was comfortable doing that with those cases because I had a great deal of information about those 9 people. So Mel Gibson did not enter the equation until after I sent the initial draft of my memo to some officials within the Office of the Deputy Attorney General. They received my memo and they sent it back to me with the direction, please add Mel Gibson to this recommendation.
So here's the thing. Mel Gibson has a previous conviction for domestic violence going back to 2011, and according to his own attorney, had attempted to purchase a firearm in 2023, but was denied based on his criminal background, which is the way it should be. If you're a convicted felon, you should no longer be able to purchase firearms. But it would appear that Mr. Gibson, who is a good friend of Donald Trump's and hangs out with Kash Patel, thought he should just be able to skip over the laws. And when Miss Oyer followed those laws, she apparently lost her job.
Todd Blanche, who is the number 2, I guess, now at Department of Justice, has this to say about your account here, saying that former employees who violate their ethical duties by making false accusations on press tours will not be tolerated. I don't know what that means. This former employee's version of events is false. Her decisions to voice this erroneous accusation about her dismissal is in direct violation of her ethical duties as an attorney, is a shameful distraction from our critical mission to prosecute violent crime, enforce our nation's immigration laws, and make America safe again. What do you say to that?
Well, Chris, the reason that I'm here talking about this tonight is because what's going on inside the Department of Justice in terms of silencing dissent is so frightening that I felt like I needed to share this story after I was fired. And frankly, I think Mr. Blanche's statement really just proves my point. My ethical duty as a Department of Justice employee, and now a former one, is to the laws of the United States and the people that I was entrusted to serve. It is not to the bullies who are currently running the Department of Justice. We take an oath of office as Department of Justice employees, and that oath says nothing about loyalty to the political administration or to the political leadership of the department. And frankly, I think that the position that Mr. Blanche is taking in his statement really just proves how terrified we should be about the current situation at the Department of Justice.
Trump and his Project 2025 acolytes are hollowing out any semblance of law and order in the United States. They are gutting our institutions so that the authoritarian takeover can be completed. Here's another really sad example of that when last week the head of the New York City FBI field office was also forced to resign.
Head of the New York field office, James Dennehy, left his office for the last time on Thursday. We showed you some of this late yesterday to the sound of bagpipes and cheers. He says he was forced to retire after he pushed back against the Trump administration's demand that the FBI hand over the names of agents who worked on January 6 cases. Here's what he had to say to his former colleagues.
There's a motto in the Marine Corps called Semper Fidelis. And Semper Fidelis means always faithful. I will always be faithful to this country, to this organization, and most of all, I will always be faithful to you. And I appreciate you being faithful to me, to this office, and more importantly, our mission. So thank you, and I will be your best cheerleader on the outside. I appreciate it.
There's a woman in that video, probably several people, but one who is wiping away the tears from her eyes. And you can just see the profound love and devotion that Mr. Dennehy's fellow agents and employees have for this man. It just really gets me. And from everything I've read about Agent Dennehy, he is a solid stand-up guy. You wouldn't know where his political leanings lie because he is a professional by all accounts. A man who defended his fellow FBI agents from being targeted by an unhinged president who was hell-bent on revenge for those agents who were simply assigned to work on Trump's cases. Agent Dennehy is a hero, in my opinion, and certainly to those agents he protected by holding the line. As I was writing this story earlier today, I just had a really bad feeling in the pit of my stomach for all of the dedicated DOJ prosecutors who love justice more than they love the big money of the big law firms, and agents like Mr. Dennehy and so many others whom you want defending your nation against the most evil people. And now we have crypto cash and completely unhinged Dan Bongino running, or should I say destroying the FBI from the inside out. These are dark days in America. I mean, it is what it is. But I personally want to thank these public servants for their commitment to the rule of law and their professionalism and for what they have given to us as public servants. And I will just go ahead and quote former Agent Dennehy when he said, "It's time for me to dig in," when he was protecting those agents that were under fire by Trump and his acolytes. And I would say the same for us. It's time for us to dig in. Dig in. I know that so many of us feel hopeless and paralyzed by the nonstop shit show that is going on. I read through comments on social media and I see so many people saying that they feel scared and afraid and paralyzed, and that is what they want. That is what authoritarian regimes want. But I am asking you, and I understand because I have been down in that dark abyss myself, I am asking you to dig in and to lock arms with me and everyone else who is fighting for our freedoms and for our democracy, which is clearly on the precipice of disappearing, which is why we need to fight for it. Fight for it. It matters. It matters. It matters when we stand up and fight. You know, at their core, Donald Trump, Elon Musk, Mike Johnson, they are just freaking cowards. They are afraid of us. So when we stand up and show our power and our solidarity, it matters. Look at Ukraine holding off the big bad Vlad. They've been doing that for years now. We can hold these guys off too. And I firmly believe that we can win, but we have to stick together. Okay. And as I've been saying recently, remember that righteous anger is a good thing. We have the right to be pissed off. And I am certainly pissed off. And I am using my anger to channel into this channel and other work that I am doing. And I hope that you would join me in that too. So thank you so much for watching. You can follow me on Instagram where I hang out a lot and put out a lot of content, on Blue Sky and TikTok where I'm coming back to life. Okay. Appreciate you guys being here. And I hope to see you back here very soon. Peace.
Can't get enough Meidas? Check out the Meidas Plus Substack for ad-free articles, reports, podcasts, daily recaps from Ron Filipkowski, and more. Sign up for free now at MeidasPlus.com.